First, tell you a little bit about the off season. We had an 8-week off season program in the winter, and obviously, I think I mentioned after signing day, it was so important that we get bigger and faster and stronger. Our stature of our team was just well below what it needed to be to compete in this league. And we put a real big emphasis on throwing around a lot of heavy weight and learning how to strain, and I think our players really responded. I was pleased with the program. We made significant improvements in our strength levels and our speed, and so it was a good start of the season. We kind of enter now phase 2 of a year-long process, which is spring practice, and it's a continual pursuit for improvement every day. And I think it starts with setting a high standard of what we're trying to accomplish every day, and probably a little higher than what we've set on them in the past year. And I think our players are seeing that. And it comes down to repeat. It comes down to getting a lot of feedback in what we're doing, critical feedback, and knowing that the process ahead of us can be mentally and physically grueling. So as long as our team is focused on continuous improvement, I think we'll keep moving in the right direction. I kind of feel like this is year 1, and last year was year 0. It was such a unique situation that we walked into last season. It didn't feel like your first year. I feel like right now this is year 1. So we obviously need improvement everywhere. I think every spring you come in and you want to improve fundamentally at every position. You want to improve in the schematic knowledge that the players have. You want to improve in the intangible values that we kind of build our program on. And you certainly want to start building a team dynamic, which this year will be very different than last year from that standpoint. You look at some of the key questions probably coming out of the spring, which I know you guys will ask. But the biggest thing is, can our freshmen who energized our team a little bit become dependable, every down contributors in the SEC? And I think that's a big jump from being excited about a player as a freshman and then turning them into every down starters who can help you compete for a championship. That's probably our biggest challenge for the spring. We obviously going to have a lot of questions in the front 7. Only 2 starters are returning, Malik and Herman. And Herman, which we'll talk about, is hurt right now from surgery. New kicker and punter. I think the 4th thing is all the returning starters. This is a very important spring for them, because we're going to have 26 new faces come in June who are, in their minds, going to be competing for a starting job. So a lot of questions for a team that probably didn't play well consistently in any area. Some personnel notes before I turn it over to questions. We all know Jansen's status. He's not going to be with us this spring. He seems to be managing his life well right now, on pace to come back, but that's day to day, month to month. Brent Brewer, did you guys, I think, get a release on Brent? Brent has been reinstated to the team. He has served a 5-week suspension from all team activities. He's still, there's some other internal disciplinary measures that are taken. One of them is suspension from a session of summer school, which will be significant. I think it was a learning lesson for Brent. It was a learning lesson for all the members of our team. It was very unfortunate what happened, and I think so many people have found themselves in a position where emotions are taking over, and you have to learn to just leave, walk away and walk out no matter what anybody does to you. So he's been reinstated. He's still got some things that he's doing, but he's back with the team. Daniel Hood, we've moved to defensive tackle in just a constant search to get bigger guys on the defensive line, so we'll see how he does. Montori Hughes is going to miss the first 2 practices for team rule violations, but he'll be back practice 3. I mentioned Herman Lathers. You know, here's some IR guys right now. Herman, he's 3 months out of a right shoulder surgery. Marquise Pear is 3 months out of his ACL, so those 2 guys are limited to nothing. Nash Nance had to get a screw in his left foot, so the first few practices he's still going to be in rehab. Y'all know about Ben. Tyler Page moved from quarterback to safety. Jimmy. And you know we have 6 new freshmen here mid-year who all have done a phenomenal job in the off-season program. 5 on offense: Worley, Crowder, Downs, Dallas, and Jackson, and then 1 on defense, Justin Galton. So that's kind of an overview. I probably left some things out, so I'll let y'all fill in the blanks for me.
Derek, you said you want the team dynamic to be different this year as opposed to last year. How so?
Well, it's going to be, just because you know, that senior class that we had was a vocal class, to say the least. And so now, you know, the first few days with this team is as quiet as I've ever seen a team. And I think, you know, but every year is a new year as it relates to team chemistry and leadership and, you know, that sort of thing. So that's the biggest thing. Heather?
With the roster limitations last year when you took over the program, was there anything that you did not or were not able to accomplish or do during spring practice that you plan on implementing this spring?
Yeah, well, I think the first 2 weeks of spring last year was them learning what our expectations were on how we practice, what we're doing. So we're going to be a lot further along in 2 main areas. Number 1 is just organizationally how we practice. What's the expectation from a tempo, from a physicality? What are these drills we're doing? And then 2 is we're going to be a year into our schemes. I mean, we have continuity on offense, defense, and special teams. So I think that's going to help us get a lot more accomplished by the end of spring than last year. Last year, the first 2 weeks was just survival for coaches and players, trying to figure each other out.
Derek, you alluded to the year 0 and year 1, and then just again there with Heather. For you, and you talked also about how wide your eyes were on the first day of spring practice last year.
Mm-hmm.
Will there be any of that for you this go around? I mean, I think you probably have a much better feel.
Yeah, I don't think so. You know, and it wasn't just, it was just so atypical of a coach coming into a program. You know, there was so much emotional baggage that was out there that it was difficult to get your arms around everything. And this year, I think everybody understands each other. There's not a lot of newness, and I think because of that, we'll be able to dive into the teaching, coaching, and improving without all the other stuff on the periphery, and that'll help us get better quicker.
Does it give you a greater sense of appreciation having been through all that last year of, okay, this is going to be a heck of a lot easier?
Well, I wouldn't use the word easier because the challenges are going to be there, but it will be, there'll be a lot better comfort level. That's probably the better term. It's never easy. And I think also that gives you a little better comfort level is you have a little better feel for the positions that, okay, we feel like we have some stability there, and then these are the areas where we still don't know personnel-wise. Where last year, I mean, I didn't know, we only had a few returning productive players, and so it was just a crapshoot of who was what. And so everybody's got a little better feel for everything, and we hope because of that we'll improve a lot more during the course of the spring. But, you know, guys, we need significant improvement, and the 2 biggest areas, and I want to hit on it again, is the freshmen turning into dependable SEC starters. That is a giant leap from getting out there a few plays, flashing a few plays, everybody gets excited, to doing it every day, doing it 12 games. That's going to take a long, rigorous process to get.
Derek, with your lack of seniors, are you concerned about leadership on this team?
Yeah, I think it's usually a concern every year, and it's really, to me, more about team chemistry. I think it starts with trying to direct the team into a common purpose, and I'm not sure we're there yet for that. I felt like so much of how we were last year, our focus wasn't all the same. There was a lot of self-preservation. There was a lot of, support for each other, but not really directed at what we're trying to achieve. And I think, I had to really try to recenter the team on the expectations of Tennessee. There's a lot of banners in that indoor of winning championships, and we got to start getting our focus aligned with some kind of end in sight. And I don't think we've been doing that. I think we've been really just kind of bouncing around, supporting each other, loving each other, holding each other's hands, hugging each other, and we're not driving toward a mission. And so I think the more that you get everybody together in sync, working for a common purpose, then it's easier to forge leadership and team chemistry.
Derek, among those freshmen that have to take a step forward, certainly Tyler's got the biggest profile.
Mm-hmm.
How do you approach this spring reps with he and Matt? Is he clear number one?
Yeah, he's our one and Matt's our two, and so he's going to get the 1 reps and Matt's going to get the 2, and then of course we got a new face, Justin Worley, that we want to see what he can do, so we'll give him some reps. But Tyler is our starting quarterback, and he obviously has to develop in so many areas. First off, from having to master the offense intellectually, and I believe that the better he understands what we're doing, the more we can do, and the more confident he'll become. But we're going to try to push him a lot more, which may cause him to struggle a little bit. And the better you get at that position, the more you want to put on him, because the more he can do, the more effective you can be on offense. And you'd love to get to a point where you give him a lot of freedom out there to do things, but that's not going to happen overnight. So he's got a lot of work ahead of him.
Joanne was talking about the young guys up front spending a lot of time together and kind of learning together. Do you feel like basically throwing all of them into the fire at the same time as a shared bonding?
Yeah, I think it's been great for him, and I think it'll pay off over time. Because I mentioned last year, we went through a lot of changes up front, and it's hard when you don't have continuity on the offensive line. And those guys, fortunately, like each other. So they spend a lot of time together, and I think that helps when they're in the huddle together. It helps when they're on the line of scrimmage of communicating. So I'm expecting them to really start taking off up front.
How do you feel about their size? I know you got Fulton listed over 330, James listed over 330. Is that something you feel good about going to?
The size is good. The strength levels are not. So, and you can see it when we watch cut-ups. Our lower body power, upper body strength. We're not pushing anybody around. And so our strength levels have to come up to match our bulk and size. And when you get that, now you can start doing something up front.
Do you think you'll see that improvement during spring practice, the strength improvement, or is that something that they're going to have to go through summer as well and hopefully see it in fall camp?
Yeah, I think it's a long, rigorous process. What's pleasing is we have some data. We're keeping pretty good data on where they are and the improvements they've made, and they all made tremendous improvements on their strength levels. Now they got to continue that, which we're going to keep lifting heavy during spring practice, and then they got to start translating it into movement on the field.
Derek, a lot of times when you replace the starting quarterback, he can go in the tank on you a little bit. How has Matt Sims handled his situation?
Matt has been phenomenal. He's had a great attitude. He's on our peer committee, which is sort of a leadership group, not really. He had one of the best. That leaves it open, doesn't it? I didn't want any questions on that. That's why. He had one of the best off seasons of anybody on the team. He really did. As far as his work ethic, his attitude, and so I'm proud of Matt. I really am. And he's handled it as well as any young man could handle, given the high-profile nature of the position, the exposure of the school, his last name, I mean everything. And I've just been proud of him.
Were you ever worried about him leaving the team at any moment during this time?
I don't worry about any of our players leaving, and if they want to, then we usually work that out when it happens. But Matt and I have had a lot of good discussions, and you know, we've been very honest with each other, and I think that's one of the reasons it's worked well.
How much were you limited by having a rookie quarterback and so many young guys on the offensive line, and how much better could that be? How much more can you do this year?
I don't know. That's what spring practice is going to be our starting point. You know, there's a lot of freshmen that go out there and flash and everybody gets excited about and they never pan out to anything. And then there's a lot of freshmen that go out there and have a great freshman year and they have a terrible sophomore year because they think they're going to be pretty good. So history really is working against us a little bit. And it's our job to make sure that neither of those scenarios happen.
As you move into year 2, what surprised you as a coach last year, or what lessons did you learn that you'll take into year 2?
Well, one of the lessons is when they say the game is over, it's not. So you got, you know, this year we're going to work on, hang on, we're going to stay on the sidelines a little bit. A lot of lessons from year 1, it always is. And every year you coach, even if it's year 25, you learn a ton about your team. You know, it's hard to, I mean, we've spent the last 8 weeks doing quality control. I shouldn't say 8 weeks, since signing day. What is that, about 5 weeks? Where, you know, we've done a lot of soul searching on the things we did well and the things we didn't do well. And obviously, schematically, we're trying to correct a lot of things that we feel like we need to get better at. And this is when you develop as a coach, you talk to other coaches. So, you know, there's a lot of lessons, and there are every year. It's hard to really put it into 1 or 2 things.
Derek, March may be very early to ask this question, but you know, you've been in the league now, you've seen the league, you have a better idea of what you're coming back. Is there any way to, and you said your expectations are going to be higher, standards higher. Is there any way to project how big of a jump you can make?
There's so much that can go into it. You know, the obvious ones are the development of this freshman class, and then how much improvement some of the upperclassmen make, and then this new class coming in, these 26 guys, how much can they contribute? Because look, the facts are we're going to need some of them. You know, I've made that comment that we're going to open up next year with over 70% of our roster freshmen and sophomores. And so to think we're going to sit there and amp it up on cruise control, I mean, we're fooling ourselves. We're going to have the youngest team probably in America next year. And so we need to start right now into making sure our sophomores of next year don't play like sophomores. We need them to play like juniors and seniors.
Have there been any changes in the way like Lance Thompson is prepared for this spring now that he's changed position coaches, and now Peter Sermon going from a GA to a position coach? Have there been any changes in how they've prepared to get ready for spring practice?
No, I think the continuity has been great. You know, certainly it's going to be a little change for our players on some, you know, how coaches teach. They're all different. But schematically, there's going to be total continuity. And I think that our defensive staff has worked well together. I think Peter's been a great addition, and Lance has a proven record of coaching defensive line. And so I feel like that our staff, it's as fine a staff as I've been a part of at any level.
Have you noticed a change in the players? I don't know, they had gone through so much changeover. How are they different emotionally, mentally, entering a season where almost everyone's still there?
Well, yeah, I think all that is bygones, and they need to approach it that way. And really, when I talk about 70% of our roster, when you ask those questions, they don't even know what you're talking about. So that's the beauty. The best thing about things that happened in the past are a new year turns, and these guys don't even know better. So I think we're past all that point, and we don't have the drama. We don't have the crying and holding hands, and we got to support each other. We need to lock it in, define where we want to go, and let's work toward it.
With Jansen's not being here in the spring, that being an area where you didn't have that much depth anyway last year, how are you going to? Are you just going to get some guys that look at that?
Yeah, it's going to be a great opportunity for some other guys. And I sat down and I spoke very frankly with all of our secondary players. I mean, it's no secret we signed a lot of guys in this class and 2 junior college guys. And their objective is not to come in and sit on the bench, I can assure you that. So this spring is very important for all these guys in the secondary to show that they can be dependable every down players in this league. And, so it's a great opportunity for them. And we know Jansen is.
Derek, now that you know your personnel better, does that change any of your thoughts about what scheme you can implement?
Yeah, I think it's going to, you're always tweaking your schemes to fit your players, and certainly you look at offense, and our makeup at wideout and quarterback, wideout's going to be totally different. So, obviously when you look at Justin and Rick and Matt and Zach, those guys, you start shaping the pass game according to what they can do. We need our runners to run better than they did last year. So there's not going to be a lot of change, a lot of wholesale change, but a little change to try to help our runners out in the run game. And defensively, we're going to try to play a little more nickel than we did last year. So we're going to practice that this spring. We need to, and we're going to do some things schematically a little differently to help our players a little bit. But we don't have a lot of big guys, and same sort of thing as last year.
Hey Derek, you talked about wanting to challenge Tyler a little bit more this spring, and you acknowledge that he may struggle a little bit. How do you balance that, by challenging without
with his confidence? Yeah, I think it's it's an inch by inch process. We're not going to throw so much on him he can't go out there and think. But generally, that's never fazed him. Like if he doesn't understand something, he doesn't care. He's just going to do something else. So a lot of guys get really frustrated because they want to master what we know. And Tyler, if he doesn't get it, he doesn't really care. Like maybe I'll get that tomorrow, but today I'm gonna just throw it to that guy and it's gonna be a touchdown. So we'll be the ones throwing our hat because he throws it to the wrong guy and it's a touchdown.
And then you talked about the increased comfort level for the players, but what about for you going into the spring? How much maybe more comfortable are you, and could that allow you to accelerate that chemistry building process?
I hope so. What it does is it allows you to coach and motivate, those two things. You don't have to spend all your time saying, okay, look guys, this drill needs to be in the south end zone of the defensive, you know what I mean? So you're doing a lot less explaining expectations and organization and a lot more of what you were hired to do, which is coach, teach, and motivate the players.
How frustrating is it? You had a young team last year, and it sounds like you're going to be even younger this year.
How frustrating? Well, it's good. It's all how you look at it. If you got a negative attitude, yeah, it's real frustrating. But I look at it as we got a lot of young talent, and so they're going to be fun guys to coach and develop and watch. And hopefully we'll feel better about them, each day they get older. So I'd be probably frustrated if I felt like we didn't have any young talent. That would be frustrating.
You mentioned needing the runners to run well. What specifically are you looking for from guys like Torin and Ray John to do?
More yards, break more tackles. You know, I'm not being funny, it's the truth.
And
like get 6 yards on that play instead of 3.
Will the growth of the offensive line, especially the 3 young guys, will that help that? And which of those 3 guys is closer to being that every down ACC guy that you
I don't think any of them are. Right now, none of them have done anything well consistently. But I've always felt like runners make an offensive line. And maybe it's because I coach running backs. That whole thing where we don't have a very good line. I've never seen a great back not make yards in all my history. Great backs make yards, and they make guys miss in space. They power through guys. And so, to me, a great back makes an offensive line better. It energizes the O-line, not the other way around. So that's what I want to see the backs to do. I want to see them create so we get energized. And that's what some of our receivers did last year. Denarius and Justin did some things down the field that, they weren't always wide open, but they made a play and they energized you.
This James Stone was so effective with that unorthodox move. Were you tempted at all to leave it alone, or are you going to?
Well, we're going to try to snap right-handed here. So we're having James eat right-handed, text right-handed.
Do you hope to find a punt returner by the end of spring practice?
Now you're really dreaming. We're going to work the same guys that were there last year. Tinkerbell didn't just do this and we have a new guy. So we're going to give them the same opportunity. Anthony did a good job, and then when the new guys come in, we'll give them an opportunity, and we'll see who kind of rises up.
You do have Vincent Dallas on campus.
We do have Vincent, yeah. So we'll see what he can do. He'll get an early look.
Derek, without a vocal senior class, who are maybe some of those guys who'd like to step up and be leaders?
Well, I think we only have 9 seniors. So if any of them want to, I'll be happy to take it. There's not I've never been on a team that has that few a senior class. And right now, do you have a 2 deep on here, Jimmy?
No, we didn't.
What happened? You didn't want to release it?
You didn't want to.
I didn't. I don't mind doing it. I thought that was standard. How many? Well, let's think about it. On offense, there's 1 senior starter listed right now. That's cool. And on defense, Malik is a senior starter that's listed right now. Who else? Austin Johnson. Herman's not a senior. He's not listed as a starter. So we have 3 senior starters right now in the 2 deep. That doesn't mean that's where we're going to end up.
Have you challenged any of those guys or other guys to step up and be leaders? Or is that something that just evolves?
I think it's something that evolves over time. I'm not one of those guys that tries to force leadership on people. I think you have to promote it and teach it, and I think that you have to empower everybody to be a leader, because you start with what is leadership. It's affecting somebody in a positive way. To me, you're affecting others too, and anybody can do that. And even your best leaders sometimes need a little leadership. And so, I don't to think that you're going to have all your leaders and everybody rallies around them this early in the season is unrealistic to me. I think, the first thing you got to do to be a leader is you got to be a little bit of an example. So, you know, if you're not doing what you're supposed to do on and off the field, then it's hard for everybody else to respect you. Does that answer your question?